Hello everyone, my name is Protesilaos, also known as Prot. In this video I want to talk to you about a suite of tools that is built into Emacs, which lets you handle in a simple yet efficient way the time-sensitive events that unfold in your day-to-day life. So the main pillars of this suite of tools are the calendar and the diary. And the idea is that you will be using those in tandem as part of a singular workflow, even though in technical terms they are implemented as standalone Emacs files, as Emacs libraries, but this is an implementation detail that should not bother you and should have no effect whatsoever on your workflow. So what I want to do here is I want to show you how to get started with recording events, time-sensitive events, and how to use the diary and the calendar for this particular need. So what we have here to get started is in this window I have the diary, which is a regular file. And in the other window over here, I have the calendar, which always shows 3 months at a time, and it focuses on the current month and the current day. So let's switch to the diary. And the idea here is that you can edit this file freely, but for the diary to understand events, you have to follow a specific syntax, which is to start with a date, optionally follow it up with an hour, a timestamp, and then the description of an event, the way I have it over here, but let's write a new one as well. Before I do it, just to say that there are lots of styles that you can use for writing dates and hours. For example, this one over here is the international standard, the ISO, but you can of course use the American style or the European style, and the same principle for the hours. Maybe you prefer a 12-hour syntax with a distinction between ante and post meridian, but personally I prefer the 24-hour clock, and you can of course customize everything. This is something that you can also see in the manual, but the idea here is to show you one specific style and you will figure out the details on your own. So let's say that I want to start recording an event. So 2021 April, so the 4th month, and let's say for the 15. So I want to have something for the 15, and this is a description. So this is what I want to have, and I save the file, and I have already created an event. Let's go to the calendar, and we see now that all days look the same, so they are all displayed in a uniform style. They are all white colored, so I cannot really know which day has something special associated with it, some event, and which one has nothing of particular interest. So when you first enter the calendar, you can hit the letter M to mark the entries that have some event associated with them in the diary. There is a variable that you can set to a non-nil value, which will make this process automatic, so you don't have to manually intervene and mark the diary entries. It will happen by default, and this is what I prefer to do, by the way, but for demo purposes I had it disabled and enabled it here manually. Anyhow, when you are over a date over here, you can just hit the letter D and it will display in another buffer the information, the event that is recorded in the diary. And you can see over here, you can see how this event, how this one over here is prettified a bit, and it has this slightly different style, which is a bit easier to read, and we will see why it is easier when we produce a buffer with more days, and you can have that very easily by passing a numeric argument to the D command. So for example, I want to have 4 days D. 4 in this case means today plus 3. So I want to have it like this, and I can see the information on display here, and it has the events for the days that I have specified. Let's remove this, and let's come over here. And when you are in the diary like this, you can move forward and backward using regular Emacs motions. They have their parallels in here. So for example, Control F moves forward by 1 day, Control B backward. They accept a numeric argument. So for example, Control 3, Control F moves forward 3 days, Control 3, Control B backward 3 days. Control N, Control P move forward and backward by a full week. Again, they accept a numeric argument. The paragraph motions that are standard in Emacs, so meta and the curly braces, move forward and backward by a full month. And of course, you can continue in that direction. You don't have to stay within the first 3 months. Control V moves a screen full in standard Emacs motions. In this case, this means to move 3 months forward. So you see we have March, April, May, and we go to June through August. And Meta V goes in the opposite direction. There is also the option to scroll the display 1 month at a time. So for example, if I hit the left angled bracket, I scroll in that direction one at a time, and in the opposite direction as well. When you hit the dot, you focus on the current day, on the current month. So those are the basic motions that you can use to move around in the calendar. When it comes to interacting with the diary from the calendar, there are various commands that you can use, but for example, you can hit the letter I. I have several commands associated with that key, so that's why it is not doing anything. It is waiting for another key. By the way, whenever you are in a situation where you have typed a key chord, so some sequence of keys, in this case it's 1, but it doesn't really matter. When Emacs is still waiting for another key, you can hit Control H to get a help buffer about all the keys, all the key combinations, all the key chords that extend, that complete this sequence. And you can see that there are some commands over here. I am using large fonts for the purposes of the demo, but it doesn't really matter. You get an idea of what is here. So let's say that I want to input an anniversary. So I will do I and then A, and you can see that it switches automatically to the diary, and it is already preparing an anniversary for that given day, the 18th, so someone's birthday. And this is the anniversary, so from now on, this will be tracked in my calendar, which is very helpful. I don't really want that, of course, but this is the idea. But this introduces me to the other notation that you can use in the diary, which is Imacslisp. What I have shown here above is just a natural language, whereas you can always use Emacslisp. So let me widen this file because I already have some examples over here, and let me quickly undo this and I will explain what that was in a bit. You can already see that now that I saved, let me show it to you now actually. Let's save this. Look at the calendar over here and you will see that there are only 3 days, 13, 14 and 15, which are styled different from the rest. And this means that they have a diary event associated with them. If you notice here the notation, I prepend exclamation mark. And this means to ignore this from the calendar. You can see, ignore it from the calendar. It is still recorded, but it is not marked in the calendar. So that's something that you may want to do. Personally, I have no use for this because if I record something in the diary, it means that I have to pay attention to it. So it means that I have to be aware of it. So I don't want to hide stuff from the calendar, but of course this is something that is up to you, so you can always tailor the exact workflow to your needs. Let's come to the Elisp notation over here. You can see that this is a bit different, a bit more difficult perhaps you may say, but there are lots of examples in the manual which render this lucid, so it's very understandable. The idea is that you will type in and you don't have to type in automatically as I already demonstrated, but you will type in one of those symbolic expressions. So for example, diary anniversary or diary cyclic, diary date, and there are others as well. And then you will pass to it a year, a month, and a day. Those are the three arguments that you have to pass to it. The exact order of those arguments depends on your configurations, because I want to have the ISO style, so the year first, then the month, and then the day. It is expressed this way, but you can of course have, as I said, an American style or a European style, so the order will match those styles. And then optionally, you can also pass an Emacs Phase to this specific event, and it means that then when this is marked in the calendar, it will be marked in that particular phase. So you can see if we go to the calendar, the 16, so you see this is the 16 over here. You can see that the 16 is rendered in a shade of red. It is red tinted. What about this one, which is number 1? So the first, you can see that the first day is yellow tinted, and you can see that the name of this phase differs. So the symbol differs here from here, and there is another one here for the 15, but because I have another event, it takes precedence. Let's remove this and see. You can see that the 15, the mundane, are grayed out. This is just my specific customization. This does not come by default. By default, there is only a diary phase, which is this blue phase. Of course, it depends on the theme that we are using. So there is the diary phase, and there is another one for holidays. So let's talk briefly about holidays. I don't want to dwell too much on them. You can hit the letter X to mark them in the calendar, and of course there is again a variable that you can set to a non-nil value for them to be rendered, to be marked automatically. So the idea here with dates, as you can see over here, is that they are rendered in a different phase, so that you can distinguish between the two. And when you are over a date, if you hit the letter D, nothing will happen because they are not recorded in our diary. We could, of course, write them in our diary if we care about them that much, but personally I don't, so I don't want to have them in my diary. Instead, I want to be informed about what this is on that specific day. So you just hit the letter H, and it will produce in the echo area, you see at the bottom of the screen, that this is the day of Europe. And what about this? This is Easter. By the way, I don't know if it is Easter. This is for demo purposes, because as I said, I don't care about holidays, whether they are religious or secular. I have no interest whatsoever. But anyhow, the idea is that you can use the calendar to track holidays as well, or any event of interest. There are other uses for the calendar, such as if you hit the letter, a specific command rather, I have changed the key binding, calendar sunrise sunset is the command. You will get information about the sunrise and the sunset in your specific coordinates. The coordinates are something, of course, that you can configure, as are time zones and all sorts of other things, as are holidays, by the way. You can configure those, and this is why I don't have specific holidays over here. You can also track lunar phases. This is mildly interesting, though again something that I'm not really into. I don't really care about the phases of the moon, but it's something that you should consider. A perhaps more useful tool that exists within the calendar library is the ability to convert from one calendar to another. So this is the Gregorian calendar. but you might want to convert it, for example, to the Chinese calendar. Perhaps you are collaborating with someone else from a different culture and you want to be polite to them and also to be able to communicate with them effectively in order to sync your calendars so you can convert your time to their time and be done effectively. So that's always quite nice. Again, this is something that is not of any use to me because I only work on my own, but it's nice to have, it's nice to know about it, and there are some other utilities that are discussed in the manual. I don't want to be enumerative, I don't want to describe everything that is in the manual. There is a reason for it to exist, and that is for you to read it and not for me to spoon feed you that information. The idea is to show you just a demo over here. So let's come back to the diary and show you how we can tweak a bit the presentation, because when it comes to specific days, you may not want to have, you may have many events clustered for that day. So for example, for this day, we may have one event in the morning. So I don't know, morning walk. And then we want to have other events as well, so we wouldn't want to copy this line and change the hour and then I don't know, something else. This is too busy for no particularly good reason. Instead, what we can do, and this is something that the diary provides for, we can treat the date entry as a heading, and below this heading we can write the events pertaining to it. So this is how you do it. You just type the day and then you have your timestamped events, and those don't have to be timestamped, but you can have them that way. So for example, hiking, and then I will use different notation just so that you can see, and then I don't know, writing, and then at 13 hours to 14 hours Emacs stuff, and then from this to let's have it like this, to 1930 we have a walk. We go for a walk and that's it. The only thing that you need to bear in mind when you write it like this is that the entries that you input must start with at least one space, because otherwise they are not understood. The only thing that is understood is this one over here, so the date, but the entries below it are not interpreted properly. So there needs to be at least one space, or at your discretion more of them. So you can use, for example, Ctrl+X tab. Indent rigidly is the name of the command, as you can see over here, and then you can use the arrow keys to adjust indentation to your preferences. It doesn't really matter how many spaces you will use. What matters is that there is one space preceding the lines for them to be clustered under the date heading. So let's have it, for example, like this. Personally, I have a command that will adjust indentation to where I always want it to be, but also align those entries. So the command does, oops, sorry, I didn't cover them all. What happened? Why isn't it working on that? Okay, so there is a bug over here apparently, which oh no, there must be a bug. Now this annoys me to no end because I cannot see what the problem is. But anyway, I will have to figure this out afterwards. But the idea is that they will be aligned like this. This works all the time, but apparently it doesn't work right now. Anyhow, so the idea is that you align them like this and you can scan the document more easily. Of course, I don't really like to keep track of the minutia, so this is something that never happens in my actual diary file. I don't have to record every little thing that happens in my life. I want the diary to be specific to stuff that really needs to be done and really needs to be done at the given day and time. So for example, writing, this is completely meaningless, this is meaningless, this is meaningless. These are stuff that I do all the time, every day, so I don't really need to know about them. What I actually need to know about them is, for example, let's say that let's say 5:30, at 15:30 there is some appointment, and this is something that I must be notified about. Which brings me to my next point, which is how to be notified about events in the diary. Let's close the calendar for now. And there are various ways you can approach this issue. One is to manually invoke the fancy display of the diary. So what I already shown when I hit the letter D from inside the calendar, but let's do it from here. I have a command for that, which will produce a diary entry. By default is for the given day. So you can see that for the given day, I have something at 15:30, so at 3:30, and then at 4, I have some specific events. And of course, you can pass a numeric argument to it to get events for the n number of days. That's one way of doing it, but this will not really work if you forget about it. What happens if you forget to invoke this command? I have in my settings, I have an option to send an email, but I don't want to actually send the email now. So let me show you the closest that I can get. Actually, this is the command, the function rather, that is used to send the email. Let's evaluate it. But what I want to do now is to prepare an email composition buffer, and then you will have to assume that this would have been sent to me under normal circumstances. So let's type a numeric argument. So let's say I want to have for the next 5 days the diary events emailed to myself. So I will just invoke the command, and you will see that I have an email composition buffer. GNUS is not running, by the way, it is informing me over there. That's no worries because we are doing a demo here. But if you have never written an email in Emacs, this is the body of the email. This is what really matters. The rest are just headers. You don't really need to worry about them for our purposes now. What matters is that the diary entries, as they appear in my diary, will be emailed to me. And that's exactly what I want. And in my configurations, I have it so that, sorry, maybe I have it here so that you can see it as well. I think, yeah, it's this one over here. So that you can see as well what I have over here. Nothing special, it's just the idea is very simple. When I open Emacs sometime in the morning, I want it to email me the diary for the day. It defaults to today and tomorrow so that I can be forewarned about what is going to happen. Of course, this is not a particularly sophisticated implementation. This is just a gentle reminder, if you will, of something that is about to happen. It is a gentle reminder, but an effective reminder. Still, there are cases where you need something more persistent, something that really reminds you a few minutes in advance of the event. And this is also possible because the way we timestamp our events over here, so for example, this is 3:30, we can specify an appointment. Actually, this is already understood as an appointment, and we can specify the minutes prior to the appointment where we should be getting a notification, a reminder about the appointment. I have set that to 15 minutes. So the hour here, it's still 8 past 3, so it won't be until another few minutes before the reminder fires off. So what we can do is, on a per event basis, we can input some special notation. By the way, those are comments when they are with the double semicolon. This is customizable, of course. And then we can input a special keyword, which is also customizable. In my case, I like it to be like this, apt for appointment. And a number. So let's say I want you to remind me of this event 20 minutes in advance. So let's save it. Now it's 9 past. So in 1 minute, we should get a notification inside of Emacs. And the idea with the notifications inside of Emacs is that you will be working, you will be doing something the way you normally work. So for example, I want to keep this as it was before. So you will be working the way you normally work, and at some point you will see you will get a pop-up buffer, and it will tell you you see the pop-up buffer over here, and it will tell you what the diary event is, and then it will disappear after a few seconds, and you can see in the mode line, yes, there is appointment in 20 minutes. You can see it over here as well. And if you keep it like this, it will run a countdown. So it will say 19, 18, and so on. And every n minutes that you specify, there is an interval. I have it every 3 minutes. That specific window will pop up again and again until the time of the appointment arrives. I think this is very effective. I have already used it, and I think it's very effective. Of course, it depends on your workflow, because in my case, I use Emacs for practically everything, including browsing the web, as I demonstrated in my previous video. So of course, for me, this is more than enough, because I only use Emacs. It's only one window, it's only one application rather, so I don't really need it to integrate with other things. Plus, I don't have a smartphone or things of that nature, so I don't need to sync with other devices. I don't have that specific requirement. So just inside of Emacs is enough for me. Of course, depending on your needs, you will have to accommodate them accordingly and adapt those to your specific requirements. In my case, this is all I need. So you can see that we have already turned to 19. I won't leave it so that it pops up another buffer. It doesn't really matter. Let's delete this. And then, of course, when the time lapses on where you are done with the event, the appointment, the timer, the reminder rather, will disappear, and you are back to where you want to be. So basically, that's all I have for you today, folks. Let me show you some quality of life, some minor extras I have. I treat those entries as headers, so it's easier for me to move from one to the next. Of course, because this is a regular Emacs file, you can use whatever motion you are using. For example, you can use iSearch to go to a specific thing that you are searching for, or you might want to use, for example, consult. In this case, I want to search for, I don't know, this, and you can see that I have those, and I can jump to that specific line over there. It's always, you can use lines as well. So for example, I want to jump to the second line. You get the idea. This is a regular buffer, no need to belabor the point. The fact that it is a regular buffer is, of course, great. So that's all there is to it, folks. I think I have not forgotten something, and even if I have, you must anyway check the manual. Control HR to go to the manual of Emacs, the official manual, then I, and then you will search for calendar, hit the return key, and you will go to the relevant node, and this has a lot of information, a wealth of information for you, but you don't really need to be a master of all of those. You just need to get started with recording events, and the rest follows from there. For my specific needs, because as I said, I don't have a particularly eventful or busy schedule, I am fine with a simple implementation, but of course there are lots of things to consider here. For example, advanced calendar and diary usage, and you see there are lots of entries under this heading, and there are other things as well, time intervals if you are into that sort of time tracking, checking all the minutia. Of course, there are more and more and more. But I think the idea is what I already demonstrated here. So what I have over here is my .emacs, which I will link to in the description. I have written as well, there are of course my configurations, but I have written as well, let's see how many words. 2,151 words for this specific suite of tools. So you can read this as well if you want. It offers an introduction and an insight into how I use the diary. But as I said, the idea is that it is fairly flexible. It does not impose upon you specific constraints on how you will organize your diary file. So it really is up to you. I have been using this for a while. I had dismissed it originally, but I eventually changed my mind. And now I think that the diary and the calendar are very effective for my specific needs, but those needs may be the same for you as well. So you can give this a try and see for yourself whether it is something that would be of interest. Finally, I must address the elephant in the room, which is the fact that I am not using org mode for this sort of thing. So the org agenda and its accoutrements. And the reason is because I don't need to. And I don't need to use org because exactly my life is simple and I won't get anything more out of it than what I already do from the diary and the calendar. Plus, I don't really see the particular upside of using org syntax. So what you see here, for example, for my diary, I don't see the point of that because in my diary, what I want to record there is supposed to be succinct, straightforward, to the point, one line and no more. I don't want to write an essay in my calendar. So the idea of having org syntax and exporting and the source blocks and all that, it doesn't make sense for the diary. So why use org for it? And of course, why use it when your calendaring needs are simple and straightforward, as in my case? Of course, if you want to use org, you can integrate it with the diary and the calendar, and this is discussed in the manual that I just showed, but also in the org manual, and you can also use the appointments, those reminders, and you can basically have them all work together. It really is up to you and how you choose to organize your life. At any rate, this is all I have for you today, folks. One very last thing that I forgot to mention is that that's the specific command I have for email will only send an email if there are diary entries. So it will not spam me with messages that display information to the effect of, hey, there is nothing for you here. I don't want that. I don't want to receive an email that first calls attention to itself by coming into my inbox and then tells me that there is nothing to do. I only want to receive an email when that needs my attention. Otherwise, I don't want to be bothered. And this is why my command, I forget where I have it. Yeah, over here, my command will only send an email when there are pending tasks. Anyhow, and by the way, this is the indicator for emails. Maybe if I switch like this, you can see it over here. So this indicator over here tells me that there is an email not related to what we are doing here. But this is why, because I am always in Emacs, it's very easy to get an indicator. I don't want to have a count of how many emails I get because that would be annoying and put me under stress. I prefer it to be generic like this, so I know that I have to check my inbox. Anyhow, that's all for now, folks. Thank you very much for your attention. Sorry about this. I have been talking for a long. I will link to my .emacs in the description in case you want to copy anything. So see you next time. Take care, folks. Goodbye.